and welcome to another Cliff's List interview. My special guest today is Joe Ducard, who is someone that has some very interesting things to say about being authentic with women. And Joe, for people who aren't familiar with you, maybe you can give us a bit of an introduction about yourself and your history and that sort of thing.
Sure. Yeah. Well, Cliff, first off, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. As I've told you before, I have a lot of respect for you and all the great information that, you have made available to people and shared on the internet and everything. So, and in live conferences and all the other stuff you've done too. So I really appreciate that. And I'm honored to be honored. So first off, thanks for that. And for anybody watching, hopefully to give you guys some value and help you guys out as well. I've been doing this for a long time, man. It was 2007 that I started this. It was right after the Pickup Artist TV show kind of came on, and I was very overweight. I was almost 350 pounds. I mean, I'd been with one woman my entire life, and I was very lonely. Didn't have many friends. I had a very long way to go. So there was a lot of work that I needed to do. And once I found out about the dating community, I really dove in. I mean, I read everything I could get my hands on, everything from David D and obviously Mystery and Ross Jeffries and all the newer guys that were coming up and Sin and all these guys, man. I just went crazy getting as much information as I could. And then I spent a long time, sifting through the information. And then came in the next phase, which was a ton of field work. There's times I spent 7 nights a week going out and approaching. And I did this all sober. Still to this day, I've never been drunk. I don't drink alcohol, so that's something I haven't never got into. But I needed to get the skills, so I put the time in, put the effort in, put the energy in, and really, forged my way through stuff. And got rid of stuff that didn't work. Came up with and found new stuff that did work. Eventually, you wind up finding mentors and stuff like that. And by 2009, I started coaching and helping out with the mystery method, then turned into Love Systems. And then I've worked for Love Systems. Even to this day, I still work with them as well. And, work with some great guys there and lots of great mentors and people like that. And I've trained and coached all around the world and helped so many people. And I'm not really a good bragger. So, I'll leave glory stories and stuff like that out of it. But, I've definitely accomplished any goals that I had with women. I've accomplished them and then some, and done things I didn't even think was possible. But the thing I'm most proud of nowadays is that I can give back and help other people. The fact that I can share things with guys, and I can have a guy come in on a program over the weekend and make more progress in 2 days than I did in my first year or something like that. So I think it's really cool. It's an honor and a privilege to give back and share my lessons with guys. And it's my passion, man. It's my purpose to, even if I wasn't doing this, I'd be doing something else to help and give back. But this happens to be the thing I'm the best at, and I put the most time into. And I'm honored to be able to do it and help out.
Tell us more about the transition. I mean, that's quite a change from being with one woman your whole life and being 350 pounds overweight. You're obviously, lost all that weight now. I'd be very curious to know a lot more about the transition from before and through the process and to now.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And, I've thought about it a lot, and I don't advise people to be motivated by pain. But pain surely is a strong motivator, right? I'd rather people be motivated by excitement and happiness. I read a whole book on that called The Happiness Advantage, fantastic book. And when people are happy, they actually do better work. But I didn't have that luxury, so I was actually motivated by a lot of pain. So it was loneliness, it was anxiety, it was depression. And, I was like every other guy, right? Like, I think just about every guy wants to be fit and look good. They want to have friends. They want to have fun. They want to have beautiful women in their lives. They want to make money. They want to have a good life, right? I wanted all of that. And in my early 20s, I saw that not only did I not have any of that, I was actually trending in the exact opposite direction of all that. So I said, man, I need to do whatever it takes to turn this around. Now, the thing about attracting women, which is so cool, and if you're listening to this, you probably know this now, but before this, you may have been in the same position as me, where I did not know that attracting women was a skill, right? I thought that you could get in shape, you could make more money, you know, you could get famous. I don't know how to get famous, right? But I didn't know that attracting women was a skill. And then once I read, you know, the game and got into all this stuff, I learned that, okay, I could work on my personality. I could come up with fun and interesting things to say. I could learn that attraction is actually, there's a game that's kind of played with this, right? There's ways to trigger attraction and all these other things like that. Now, some of it doesn't work all the time, and I'm a big advocate for that. I'll definitely say that. You know, one thing that I that I didn't like about the guys when I was learning was they said, "Oh, I can get every girl I talk to. If you hit the attraction switches, you can get any girl you talk to, this and that." I'm telling you, man, I've been doing this for a long time. I've been out with the best in the world. I've been out with those original guys. I've taught lots of guys. Nobody in the world can get every girl they talk to. I'm sorry, that there's no way around that. But you can for sure develop skills to consistently attract women and have a much better life and do much better, right? So that was eventually what I learned. That's what I got into. But you know, when I first started, there was a lot of work to do. But looking back on it, the crazy part is it was some of the best times of my life. You know, there was so much for me to accomplish that I was getting up in the morning excited about life. I was like, okay, I'm going to go listen to some Tony Robbins in the car. I'm going to practice my routines. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to eat healthy. I'm going to go out tonight and yeah, I'll get rejected, but I'll learn something and I'll journal and I'll come up with notes. And I was actually really excited to make such a big change. I had so far to go that rather than looking at it in a depressing way, like, oh man, I'm a piece of shit and I got so far to go. I actually was able to kind of look at it where like, man, I have a lot of work to do, but this is work I kind of enjoy. I started to see the progress. And that's the thing. When you see progress, you start to get more motivated. You're like, okay, now I can talk to a girl now I could approach a girl, right? Now I could talk to a girl for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Maybe I get a phone number, right? And maybe get a date. Or when I was losing weight, I was like, okay, I'm losing weight on the scale, maybe losing some inches off my waist or whatever it was. And the progress became addicting. The time where it was tough was when I was going out and doing the right things, but I wasn't making the progress. And that's where a lot of guys wind up slipping off and falling off of this. And if you're listening and anybody can relate to that, I really encourage you to keep going forward, because there are definitely times, even nowadays in my life, where you know, I'll do all the right things and things just don't go well. You know, I remember even last year I was doing some of the right things, and you know, some things in my life just weren't going great, right? Where like, let's say this last week now, even with other things in my life, the opportunities, I have a whole bunch of opportunities just came up out of nowhere, right? But they didn't come out of nowhere. They came from all those times of me putting in the work, even when it wasn't going well. So I always had the big picture in mind and said, you know, I'm going to keep trying this. I'm going to keep going forward because I know I'll discover something. And at the end of the day, I had a guy in a mini seminar ask me once, he said, how did you keep going when, you know, you were failing so much and getting rejected and it wasn't going that well? How did you keep going? And I told him, I said, to be honest, man, I had nothing to go back to. Right. So if anyone is having a tough time and they're saying, oh, maybe, you know, this dating skills are tough and I'm not learning them or whatever it may be, you know, working on your career or fitness or whatever, ask yourself, what's there to go back to, right? You're going to eat pizza and sit on the couch and stop going out and stop talking to girls. Like what, then what, you know, your life's going to be terrible. So enjoy the process and keep working towards it. And the cool thing about nowadays is like you've been doing for so long, is sharing great information with people where you can get awesome information. And, you know, I used to call them virtual mentors, right? Before I had the confidence to take a boot camp and get trained in person, get criticized. I was kind of afraid of that when I first started. You know, I had videos and books and things like that. And I had people that I had to learn from, and they became my virtual mentors that I had to learn from. So there's help out there. And at the end of the day, if you keep taking the action, I mean, there's nowhere to go but up. So that's kind of those are kind of my mindsets that kept me going through this.
Tell me about the specific things that you adjusted and corrected that, you know, from things that weren't working to things that started to work.
Great question. That's a great question. So when I first got into this, I remember a quote in the game. Okay. I may not be getting it word for word here, but as far as I remember it, Neil Strauss said something like, you know, our tireless professor of pickup was at it again, using the same lines, routines, and stories that he did the night before, and he got a tongue down or a phone number almost every time, right? And I saw that, and I was like, hold on, wait a minute. This guy shows up and uses a script, and this uses the same script every single night, and he gets great reactions every time. And I was like, you better believe that I can memorize a script for 30 minutes and I could go out and spout the script to girls. If I'm going to get results, then shit, that's what I'm going to do. So that's what I really, really got into. I mean, I was so diehard on the routines. I remember the third time through reading the game, I hand transcribed every routine in the whole book. And, I would memorize these things. I would speak them out to a microphone and play them in my car and memorize them. And I thought the whole thing was just me spouting stories. A lot of them weren't mine in the beginning, but just spouting these stories. And I did get good reactions off of some of them. And but the funny part was I could talk to a girl for 10 or 20 minutes, and one, I had them all numbered 1 through 5, my attraction routines, and then my qualification starters and all that stuff, my openers, obviously. And I could talk to a girl for 10 or 20 minutes, but after 20 minutes, I'd get her phone number and I'd run out of routines. And I was like, now what the hell do I do? And then I would get her number. I'd never follow up. And I wasn't actually, developing anything with these women besides getting a good reaction up front. So eventually I started to learn from some other guys, and they were talking about improvising conversation with, taking the material, like asking questions, then taking the material that the girl gives you to now build on that and expand the topics a little bit more. And up to that point, I was still running all routines. I'd start to come up with my own routines, and I came up with my own stories because I never felt good about just telling somebody else's story that had nothing to do with me. I've never been a good liar my whole life, so that never really worked for me. So eventually I came up with my own funny stories and anecdotes, kind of like a stand-up comedian. But once I found these guys and they showed me to kind of trust my intuition and how to branch conversation into different topics, then I threw pretty much all the routines and stuff in the garbage. And I said, look, I'm just going to try to improvise this and work on my conversation skills and pay attention more to the girl. A lot of things about the old school stuff I was learning was, they used to have the 90-10 rule, right? Which is you do 90% of the talking, they do 10. And there was another guy who I really liked called Captain Jack, and he said the 90-10 rule should get flipped around actually after a little bit, where the girl does 90% of the talking and you do 10%, because girls love to talk and they give you a lot of information to go with, right? So eventually I started listening more and giving her opportunities to say things, and then I could now add on to that, add my own pieces of it and kind of get more juice out of the conversation rather than worrying about what my next routine was and kind of plowing and ignoring everything she was saying. So I wound up building a little bit better of connections. And now I can go out, which is the cool part and which is my goal for all my students, is I can go out at night and like, I don't need to know I don't need to have pre-planned what I'm going to say. I could just say, okay, there's a girl, I'm going to go say hi to her and get to know her a bit, see what she's about, see if she has a good energy. I'm going to tell some jokes, see if she has a sense of humor, and then see if we click. If we click, we're going to keep talking. And if I'm talking to her and she doesn't give anything and she's not there, I'm not going to try to plow with 20 minutes of routines. I'm going to give a good effort. She doesn't give anything back. I'll talk to somebody else. I don't try to win them all over. Now, back in the day when I had the routines, yeah, I could talk for 20 minutes and a girl who had nothing to say, she could sit there and listen to me, but that girl was never turning into anything. So these were, we used to call the 20-minute set to nowhere. I'd have a lot of these interactions that were long, but they never turned into anything. So now I could go in and feel if there's a chemistry in the first few minutes. And if it's not there, there's no ego part of me that needs to make sure I plow and win her over to get a flaky phone number. No, if it's not there, it's not there. I can talk to somebody else. So that's kind of how that's a big way where what I teach and what I learn is kind of transition from some of the older stuff that I had learned when I first started. When
you start talking to a woman today compared to like when you did it before, like before you were learning, there's probably a lot of subtlety that happens that results in a more likelihood of a connection. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you can maybe elaborate on what is it that is different from the way that you maybe communicate now from when you started out and you kind of you learn from experience, and like I'm kind of like wanting to tap into the experience and learn more about the specifics of the things that you adjust to now that maybe you didn't think of before, that you've learned from experience?
Sure. Yeah. That's another great question. And this is awesome. I like where this is going. Yeah. So let's say back in the day, okay, I'd go in with an opinion opener, right? I'd say something like, "Oh, hey, would you date a guy named Nigel?" Right? Is that a deal breaker name? And then whatever they reacted, I would. Now this is my turn to body rock. So now I turn away and body rock. So I'm actually ignoring what they're saying. So I'm ignoring any possibility of carrying a conversation somewhere else. So I'd ignore that. Then I come back in. I got to go in a second. But before I do, a buddy of mine got this roommate, and this is his name. And then I tell this story, right? Once again, ignoring their reactions and all that stuff, plowing forward with my story, saying all that. I'd be over the shoulder and trying to go back and forth. And as I'm doing this over the shoulder, I'm not paying attention to what they're saying, right? And I don't want to bash any of this old school stuff, right? It gave me a start, and it can definitely work in some situations, but it'll definitely not work on a dance floor or a loud club or anything like that, or a girl who's moving. But in a lounge or something like that, maybe it could still work. But I found out that I was kind of ignoring a lot of the signals and things that I was getting, and I was kind of talking forward. I remember back in the day, a group of girls were like, "Is this guy a newscaster?" They actually said that to me. And I didn't know how to react to it. So I just kept talking and telling my routines, but they were so scripted and programmed out, and I had to plow through them that there was no chance to kind of get any feedback from the girls. Right. So I would tell forward with that. I would go with the story, maybe we should give him another name, like Steele, like, "Oh, Steele, that's a badass name. Yeah, I like that." They go, "Ha, that's funny." And then I back on a bit, maybe like a best friends test, right? "Oh, you guys look like best friends. I could tell. You look like the good one. You look like the bad one. Let me ask you. All right, do you guys use the same shampoo?" And then they'd say, "Yeah." They'd look, "Okay, now you're looking at each other. That's called girl coding." When you look at, so the whole thing was me telling these things that were just going and going and going. Then I'd go to the next one. You guys have bar names. We've got to give you guys some bar names. Let me think. Okay, you could be Alexi. That's like a sexy name. We'll give that to you. And then the girl you're like, you could be, let me think, spin her around. You could be, you're going to be a Beatrice. And then I turn away and she'd be like, "Oh my God, Beatrice," whatever. And they're just gimmicky things to get her to kind of say something back. But I'm not really getting to know her. She's not getting to know me. And after a while of kind of plowing forward with all these things, I'm just so in my head of trying to get this script down where I'm not listening to anything they say. They're not investing anything in the interaction. It's actually me just talking. And all these things I'm talking about don't really have much to do with me either, right? They're just kind of stuff to bump buying temperature, which bumping buying temperature is good, and bumping state and all that is really good. But I just got sick of saying these things after 2 years, man. I was just like so sick of using the same thing. So, nowadays I'd go in, forget the questions and all that stuff. I'd either introduce myself or I'd say something about the situation. Let's say I introduce myself to 2 girls. I'd be like, "Hey, I'm Joe." And she'd be like, "Hey, I'm Jen. I'm whatever." Like, "I'm being social. I'm being social tonight." She'd be like, "Oh, that's cool." And then I'd say, if they gave me something, I'd go with it. If not, I'd say something like, "Yeah, I was on the, we're always on the phone and doing all this stuff. I know it's really weird to talk to people in person nowadays, but, I figured we'd dig up this old school thing called socializing. You guys ever heard of it, or something like that?" And they'd laugh, they'd talk about it. And then from there, if they're cool, like one of my topics of interest is how the phones take away from socializing and how important socializing and social connection is, right? So we can get into that topic. And if they talk about, "Oh my God, that's so true," and be like, "Do you guys like talking on your phone more or in person?" And like, "I love talking in person. I love so now we could actually go into a conversation about that, which is one of my topics that I find really interesting. That's one thing I tell students too. Let's list out topics that you find really interesting and things you love talking about. And I help them weave them into the interactions, right? So even that approach, I can get into a conversation that I'm really interested in, I think is really cool. And now if a girl's into that too, then we could have a connection or a commonality on that. So I could even go on that, right? And if we do want to ask a normal question, I could say, "Where are you from?" Right? And she says, "Oh, I'm from here. What do you think of the city?" And then I could say, "I used to be from the East Coast, and the East Coast people are like this. But what I like about this city is, people are really open-minded. They like doing outdoor activities and doing, eating healthy and all this other stuff like that. And it's also a really cool, young, vibrant city where I live, right?" And then now those are things and values that I like. And now she can say if she likes those too, right? So now we can build commonalities off of that. So as you can see, I'm talking about things that are more relevant to me and things that I'm more interested in. So I could see if I have a connection with the girl, right? And a lot of times I get a good dialogue back from these girls and they contribute, so then we can go off on it. Now, if I'm bringing these topics up and she's not interested in any of these topics that I'm interested in, like I said, then I'll just move on and talk to somebody else. I'm not going to try to plow for 20 minutes to try to, just because she's attractive, like physically. So I want to actually kind of build somewhat of a connection. I found the best interactions that wind up going somewhere are ones where we do have somewhat of a connection. And if we do have that, then we'll keep going. If not, then I'd rather spend my time with somebody that I do have it with. So I'm not, like I said, I'm not Mr. try to win everybody over. I'm more so like, hey, let's see if we get along or not. And if we don't, no worries. I'd rather meet somebody else. So that's and most of my students, their goals, the main goal I get from my students is, okay, I want to go out, have some fun. I'll date around a bit, but I want to find somebody that I connect with. That's mostly all my students' goals, right? Is that same thing. So according to that's, you know, the way that I'm teaching these interactions actually works really well with that as well too.
All right. Well, tell us now how you transition into the personal, into the intimate. From you've got someone talking to you, and now you've got to, I guess, turn that into something more personal.
Like escalating the interaction forward, you're saying?
Well, I mean, you know, you're talking to someone about using the phone and socializing, and you know, you're having a great conversation, but now, you know, you want to, you know, take that to the next level, which is something more intimate or more personal or more,
Sure.
you know, not just conversation. Now it's me and you, man and woman. So how do you?
Sure.
What do you tell us a little about how you sort of propose to do that typically?
Yeah, so we used to have qualification. You know, I still call it qualification or screening. I call it now as well too. So what I tell students is, you know, it's never on me to tell you what your goals are, right? I don't push any end outcome on anybody. You know, a lot of the old school, some of the old school stuff I learned was like, you know, talk to her, then build like a really super deep rapport, maybe get a number, talk to her for 7 hours or whatever like that, and kind of go forward. That's fine, but that's if you want a girlfriend, right? Then maybe that would work really well. So I ask the guys what their goals are, right? If you want to, you know, escalate things quicker, if you want to casually date, if you want to find a girlfriend, or also something that I've been doing now too is if girls are cool and I want to be friends with them, then I get their numbers, we become friends. You know, I can have parties at my place, and I could build kind of a social circle. So that's another option as well too. So depending on what goal you pick for your interactions, that's when you're going to change how you proceed forward. So I believe it's all kind of the same in the conversation, where I still teach push-pull. I think push-pull is a great example, right? I teach push, pull, and then normal. There's normal conversation as well, right? Normal conversation, just very basic, you know, where are you from? What do you do? That type of stuff. The pushing is going to be, she says something, you know, you're such a dork. All right, get off of me. Or she asks you a question, you give like a bullshit answer, right? Like she says, what do you do? And you say, you know, I'm retired until the next Magic Mike movie comes out. I hope I get an 8-pack in the next 3 years, and then I'll be a stand-in for Channing Tatum's ab double or something like that, right? So that's more like the push. And the pull would be where you could ask some more deeper questions. You know, what are you really into? What are you passionate about? You can kind of go into that. What's something interesting? Tell me something interesting about you. But like I said, that part where you're going deeper into the qualifying and the screening, it changes depending on what your goals are. If you want someone who's kind of a friend, you find out what their hobbies are and what they like to do for fun. And if you have common interests, then that's somebody I can invite to parties. That's somebody I could go on dates with or spend some more time with. And we could do something where we have a commonality, right? If I meet a girl who likes hiking and is into art or something like that, then maybe I might invite her to an art gallery. Or I might invite her on Sunday to come to a hike with me or something like that. If I'm traveling, or, you know, I find the girl attractive, there's a lot of physical chemistry, then maybe, you know, we'll do something faster than we normally would. And it kind of doesn't matter what her passions and all that are, you know? So it just depends on, I always tell guys to define what you want out of the interaction. When I get to this point, when a student has a sticking point of, I can approach, I can have a conversation, it goes pretty well, but then it dies out. That's a big sticking point that guys have. Okay, I can approach, the conversation's getting carried out, and then I hit this point where it kind of just drops off. And usually it drops off because of the ambiguity. The girl doesn't know what you want. And when a girl senses that you don't know what you want, she usually is just going to walk away and find someone who does know what they want. So that's why I ask the guys, I say, what's your ideal interaction? What do you want to get out of this interaction? And depending on what that answer is, then you can follow a different game plan as far as building rapport and progressing it forward. So that's kind of how I leave it a little more adaptable. So it's not really, one size fits all. It's more so what you want out of it. And then we kind of adapt it to that. If a guy wants a girlfriend, I'll have a guy list all the qualities he wants in a girlfriend. And we'll talk about ways of bringing those stories up and asking questions to see if she fits into those categories, right? So that's where the screening, I find it's much better to make qualification and screening customized to what you're looking for in the interaction when it comes time to move it forward.
I think that I think guys listening to this are still going to want to know, how do you get more intimate with the woman? I think that you're developing rapport, you're developing this connection, but taking it to the next step to be more physical. I think that I think they're curious how you would recommend guys to move things to the next step.
Oh, physically, okay, yeah, sure, that's no problem. So with touching and physicality, I teach guys push-pull as well, just like you do verbally, right? So you could pull a girl in, oh, you're really cute. All right, it's too bad you're a dork, push her away, something like that, right? So that's push-pull verbal with some physical as well. So I always say start small when it comes to touching, right? So if you're going to touch her on the back of the arm, she says something, you're like, oh, you're adorable. You give her kind of a side hug. You want to kind of gauge how she is receptive to your touching, right? If you're touching a girl and you're starting to just touch a bit to kind of see how things are, and she's really clammy, then you're not going to want to, put the full court press on this girl. You want to preserve the comfort levels and definitely not do anything too aggressive for sure. But, even a simple thing, like if you put your arm around a girl and you're talking to her for a second, and then she puts her arm back around you, like that's a good sign, right? That's a sign that, okay, this is good. Maybe we can move this forward, right? Even really simple stuff to start out. I'll do stuff like funny handshakes. Like I'll give her a handshake. I'll do one of these things, a fist pound, and like do a little salt sprinkle or something like that. Just something fun to kind of get a little touching in there. A buddy of mine shared a really interesting study the other day. And I don't know exactly what it was, but it was something along the lines of, after 30 minutes, they tested two groups of people, and it was like somebody who was like giving them a test. And the instructor A didn't touch them at all during the 30 minutes, and instructor B just tapped them, just put their hand on them just for a second, twice during that 30 minutes, just to just establish some touch, just touch them for a second, just something really basic. And they asked which instructor you felt more of a connection with, and it was like much higher of a result that they felt a connection with the instructor who touched them just briefly for 2 times during that 30 minutes. So that just goes to show that touching can absolutely help to build more of a connection and just a connection in general with somebody. So I say start early with the touching, start small, and if things are working, you want to go up on a gradient, right? If the handshake works, if a little bit of a side hug works, then you can start to move up a little bit more, right? Then maybe you can grab her by the hand and bring her to another area in the venue and have her start to follow you around or something like that. You can, I tell guys to bring girls on the dance floor. You don't have to be a great dancer. You could hold her hands and just kind of swing around a little bit or do something like that. A dance floor can be a great excuse to kind of get some touching in and build a little bit of a sexual tension. One great rule that I learned years ago, which is always good, is if you're starting the touching and you're hugging her or whatever, you're dancing, you want to be the one who breaks it off as well too. You don't want to be so pushy with your touching that she says, okay, stop, that's enough. So you want to gauge and see how she responds, but you want to be the one saying, okay, that's enough. All right, get off me. Let's slow this down. And I found that's one of the best ways to build sexual tension is when you're actually moving things forward and starting the touch, building some tension there, and then you actually backing it off. If you could do that back and forth, I mean, that goes all the way till the end, all the way till you're in the bedroom, man. Like if you can do it that way, and it not only does it preserve her comfort levels, she feels better about it, but it helps build a little bit more of a tension with the escalation as well too. So that's something that I teach too.
Okay. Tell me a little bit today about, the way you recommend guys meet women. I know that I think you mentioned very much into meeting them in person as opposed to, I guess, online so much. Or although I'm not sure if you do that as well.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a topic that's so important, and it's a topic that in my personal life I talk about with my friends a lot as well too. You know, one thing about me, I'm 32 years old right now. I've been doing this, like I said, since 2007. So yeah, I'll be 33 this year. That'll be 12 years I've been doing this. I'm still single, and you know, I still go out and do this stuff too. That's another thing as well. I'm sure there's stuff you can learn from every coach out there, but if you want to learn, you know, I always try to stay relevant. You know, I'm out there and I'm doing the same thing as my students, so I try to really be in the trenches and sharing with you guys what's working and what's not. So just recently, I downloaded some dating apps again. I hadn't had them for 6 months. I tried them for the last month. Even me personally, I really wasn't getting that great of results. Now I'm really picky on there. I only swipe on the girls that I'm really, really into. But you know, as far as what I'm attracted to, I didn't find that many of the girls on there. And even the girls that I matched with, no matter how interesting and funny I was, they still weren't responding to the messages. So they weren't really taking it that seriously. So it could just be my city. So I have every guy. It depends. What I do if I'm working with the student one-on-one is I survey their assets. Okay. And I say, what does this person have that'll help him meet women? If I have a guy who's decent looking, who has a traditional look, and you know, goes and gets a photo shoot and has some good pictures of himself, then you better believe we're going to try some online dating and see how that works. If I have a student who's not that great looking and his pictures aren't really going to help him out, then that's somebody who I'm going to advocate definitely meeting women in person. Now, even the good looking guy too, I'm going to have him meet women in person as well. Another thing is your city and your location. What is it like, right? If there's happy hours or outdoor bars, if it's warmer weather, that'll be really good. If you live in a city like Chicago, it's wintertime, you're going to have to go to clubs and other things like that to meet women. If you have cool interests, that can be a great way of meeting women, right? I always advocate guys, if they're lifting, to try to get to a CrossFit gym. That could be a great place to meet women. You know, if they're into spirituality or yoga or anything like that, that can be good. Salsa dancing, I've recommended to a lot of guys, is a great way to kind of meet women as well too. If they're into that stuff. Now, either if they're into it or they're curious about getting into it, then I'll encourage them to try that as well too. But I believe every man, make no mistake, I believe every man, you know, this is myself included, should go through a phase where they go out to bars, go to lounges, and maybe even some clubs, and learn how to cold approach women. It is definitely the most difficult way of meeting women if you don't have any experience in it, but it'll build so much character. It'll build your skills, and all the other stuff becomes easy. If I go to a house party, or if I have a house party and someone brings a friend around, they're going to be so nice to me that I could flirt with them no problem. It's no big deal, because I've practiced on flirting with somebody who's a complete stranger, right? So I believe all guys should go through the phase of building those foundational cold approach skills. I really, really believe it's very important, especially for guys coming up nowadays, man. Like, you see some of these, I feel so bad for these kids coming up now. They're just so glued to their phones and they don't get much socialization. And man, they're going to be in for a rude awakening when they get into their 20s. So those kids especially are going to need to get out and develop some social skills. And these social skills have made me tons of friends. Obviously, I've met women, eventually a career of coaching people on how to do them. And they just paid off for me in so many other areas of life. So I really advocate going to some type of social, you know, Mystery used to call them social gatherings, whatever a social gathering is. It could be a meetup, it could be a bar, it could be a happy hour club, wherever it is for your city. You have to do some field work to find out where that is. But whatever there's women, to go out there and start mingling and developing your skills. That I believe should be the meat and potatoes of how you meet women. Then eventually, if you want to develop a social circle and throw some parties and join the gyms and the classes and all that other stuff, then more power to you. I think those are great options as well too.
I think most of the guys listening to this are going to be wanting to know how you, again, transition, you know, from meeting a girl in the gym or meeting her, you know, in a class or in a yoga class or something like this. I think that a lot of guys experience that, yeah, the women are there, but it's another thing. And, you know, maybe you'll meet them on a very, you know, somewhat superficial level, even, or even develop some rapport. But again, it's that transition, you know,
Sure.
a lot of times in a yoga class, the women are just, they're really quite attractive, and they're doing their stuff, but then they boot out of there really quickly at the end of the class.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of guys are very curious on how you convert your meeting them into something more personal.
Yeah. Another fantastic question. Absolutely. Now you want to do some, like I said, some field work. So like I know here we have a lot of yoga classes. Now there's different types of yoga classes here. There's some where it's a small studio. You go in right after the girls take off, right? Then there's another studio which has a lot of different rooms that has common areas. So there's a lot of mingling that can go on in between the classes. So what you want to do is you want to try the different ones out to find one where you'll have a little bit more opportunities to mingle. Okay. So that's definitely true. That's why I say CrossFit is really good, because I don't believe your standard meathead gym is very good for meeting women, because they go in, they have their headphones on, they go to the locker room, they take off. I mean, what are you going to chase them down in the parking lot? I mean, you could do that, but that's not something that I, think anybody should really be using as their bread and butter of meeting women. Now, a CrossFit class is somewhere that has some common areas. Let me just adjust my camera back. Somewhere like a CrossFit class, not only will it have some common areas, but I know people in CrossFit gyms are much more closer knit, and they have events. Like they'll say, hey, we're going to go out for drinks this weekend, or we're going to have a barbecue. So a lot of these certain type of classes, they'll actually have some get-togethers as well too. So you want to definitely try to aim for those. That's going to be your best place. I know when I went to hip hop dance class, we all, the people who are around, we all talk for a good 5 minutes or so before class as we're getting ready. Hey, I'm Joe. What's your name? Very easy to get to know the person. After class, you can chat a little bit. Hey, what did you think of the class, right? I'm trying to work on this move, this and that. And then, oh, so how long have you been in the city? Okay, cool. Yeah, you talk about that for a bit. A good topic to get onto is like, what do you like to do on the weekends, right? Now, here's the thing too. If you're at one of these classes and you see somebody a lot, you want to do what we call a slow burn type of game. You don't want to have to knock it out of the park on the first thing, hit all the attraction switches and go for a home run on that first class. If you see somebody a few times, spend a little time getting to know them. Then eventually you can ask something like, what do you do on the weekends, whatnot? And then say, hey, I'm going to, if there's a commonality, right? Like hiking or another class, or if they go out to grab drinks and you do too. Hey, I'm going out to grab drinks at this bar. I love it this weekend. We should get together. Let me take your info down. Very easy. Take her number, text her. You could take her Instagram as well too. And then now you can invite her to these things that you have going on. So I would definitely advocate a slower approach to these things rather than going. You don't want to be the guy going to these things and just the guy who's approaching every girl and like, go out with me or not. You'll be very weird in those situations. So I say definitely take a slower approach. Try to find ones that are more conducive to mingling, like salsa, if, for example. Like I always tell guys to do that. In salsa class, you have to dance with the girls, right? You have to have a partner, right? So you get to know these people. There's a lot of opportunities to talk to them. Start small with rapport. Get the basic things, how long they lived in the city, where they're from originally. Then move on to things they like to do, things they do for fun, things that they're interested in. If you have commonalities, it becomes very easy at that point to ask for a number and make plans to see them again. So it's definitely something that I would say to take a little bit more time with it. It's not like cold approach where you go in, see if there's a connection and take off, right? That other thing that I advocated is more so for complete strangers when you're at bars or something like that. But if you're at a class, you already have a commonality built in, which is super cool. You want to take your time. Another good approach you can do if you're really afraid to start that conversation with one of these girls is say, hey, I see you in class all the time. I never got your name. I'm Joe. What's your name? And she says, oh, okay, whatever. Then from there into very simple conversation. What do you think of the class so far? Or what part of town do you live in? How long have you been in the city? What do you think of the city? Like really simple stuff at first, kind of get to know them. If there's something there, you could find out what they're into, build some commonalities, get the number. It can be pretty easy, but my best advice is don't try to hit a home run on the first shot, and try to find places where there is a little bit of an opportunity to mingle with somebody.
Tell us then about the cold approach. What have you learned from all your experience in doing that yourself? Like what works more than not, and what is there to avoid doing? Just give us a little primer on cold approach.
Yeah, man. Oh my gosh, I learned so much. I learned so many things. We could talk about it till the end of time. But what what are some big takeaways? Huge takeaway is you're not going to get every girl you talk to. That's for sure. And at the end of the day, you're not looking to get every girl that you talk to, right? I've seen girls out that were super attractive, totally my type, just physically. And I've walked up, really good energy, really positive, talked to them, maybe even been funny and humorous and brought a really good energy. And they just look like this. And they gave one word responses. They could have went from a 10 to a 3 because of their personality. There's no way in hell you're going to win that girl over no matter what you do. If she's not interested, you don't know, maybe she's had a bad day. Maybe she has a boyfriend. Maybe she's just somebody who is young and really basic and, and hasn't developed her personality yet. So that's one thing, is rather than looking at it as rejection. So many guys are like, it's a big thing that even advanced guys struggle with too. They're like, oh, I'm going in and maybe I should have gamed her more, or my game should be better. I'm not winning her over. And it's like, dude, maybe it's not your game. Maybe you guys just aren't compatible. Like, that's just a huge thing that I really want to get through to guys, is you're not going to be compatible with every girl, and that's okay. And I ask guys too, I'm like, do you like every girl that you talk to? Do you get along with every girl that you talk to? And they're like, no. So the girl's not going to like you every time. And that's okay. Don't take it so personal as a part of, oh, I'm a bad person or this and that. One thing I do in my programs, it's a really cool exercise, you guys can do as well if you're listening, is, I have guys write down all the things about themselves that they love, that they respect, all their accomplishments. I have them make a nice big list of things about themselves that they're really proud of, right? And they read the list out loud. We go over the list, call it your self-esteem list. And I tell them to keep it in their phone. And if you go out and talk to a girl for 30 seconds and she has ADD and she doesn't look at you and she walks away, did she reject you because of all those things on those lists? Does she even know any of that about you? She doesn't know anything, right? So she could have just had a totally different mindset, could not be interested in the moment. So the big thing is, don't take the rejection personal. If anything, you got to thank the girl for not wasting your time, right? It just wasn't meant to be. And that's not somebody who you're going to connect with anyway. There's somebody who you will connect with. There's a lot of girls who you will connect with, but you're going to have to do some approaches and put yourself out there, because you don't know those things before you approach, unfortunately. It'd be great if we did, if we knew who we were going to connect with beforehand, that we could just kind of laser in and cherry pick, but that's not the thing. I'd rather think of it, now I'm getting a bunch of rejections. It's not like that. It's like, I'm going to see if these girls are cool. And if they're not cool and we don't connect, then that's no problem. I'm going to kind of move on. And once I really, really grasped that concept, it took me a very long time to grasp that. It was so freeing for me, and I was able to do much better and develop much better connections. And another thing too is, a great analogy is poker, right? If you're playing Texas Hold'em poker, you get 2 cards dealt to you. The best card you can get is 2 aces, right? There could be some games where you could play for 2 hours and you're just getting dealt the shittiest cards, a 2 and a jack, a 3 and a 7 offsuit. You're just getting dealt the shittiest cards ever for 2 hours straight. You're like, man, this sucks. And there'll be another game where you're playing, and in a half hour, you get aces, kings, queens, you get dealt a whole bunch. The point of this is, there is a randomness to this, okay? There's some nights where I go out and yeah, almost every girl I talk to, I may spend most of my time in great interactions. Then there may be times, like even this last weekend I went out, man, I couldn't connect with a girl to save my life one of these nights. It was so rowdy. It was a big festival in town, and I just wasn't connecting with the girls that I wanted to. And rather than me leaving that and saying, oh man, I'm supposed to be a master at this and this and that, I don't take any offense to that. I know there's a randomness to this, and I know it has nothing to do with how I am as a person. And I think the reason why I've been able to have so much longevity in this, the reason why I'm still excited to get out and do this, the reason that I've been able to do this sober for 12 years in these hostile environments is, I've learned that stuff, that's just how this is. There's a randomness to this. And I don't really take as much offense to it. I don't ride emotional waves with it anymore. And I know that when I find someone who's awesome and I get along with, which I can usually do a couple times in the course of a night, no problem. Some nights, like I said, are random. I don't really want to connect with many. But I know that the ones that are bad, that's okay. I'm going to get dealt those bad cards. And if I keep folding those, eventually I'm going to get dealt some aces. So that is a really, really key thing to remember about cold approach. Okay. Now, if you bring me to a house party and you introduce me to people, I may be the man with everybody I talk to, right? If I go to a networking event or a warm event, I can go in and be charming and probably get a phone number from everybody that I talk to, right? But, you know, at the end of the day, like, it doesn't matter to me. I know that these things are different depending on the context that I'm at. If you're in Las Vegas at a huge club like XS and you're hanging on the outskirts of the dance floor and you're approaching girls that are walking by, you're going to have a 90% fail rate. I don't care who you are, no matter how good looking you are, how great your game is. Girls are just in transition. They're in a loud, rowdy place. Like, they're going to keep walking by. It has nothing to do with you personally, right? But places that there's a warmer context, like a warm approach, right? Like I said, a networking event, or places that are lounges or a little more relaxed, you're going to have more opportunity to kind of do that. Now, does that mean that that's better than the club? Maybe, but some of those other places don't have as many opportunities, right? So sometimes there may only be a couple cute girls in a lounge, or in a club there may be hundreds or thousands, you know, in Vegas of attractive girls, right? But you have to understand that with all those girls and the stimulation, you're going to have more of a chance of rejection. So it's a long spiel I just made there, but the whole point is that there's a randomness to this. And, you know, I hate, if somebody says that they have a super high success rate and they're awesome all the time, like guys used to say when I was coming up, like, man, you're completely full of shit, because I could bring you some places where I know you're going to suck. Like, there's no doubt about it. Sure, you could, like I said, you can have 100% success rate where in a quieter or an easier place or somewhere where a house party or something like that. But just to let you guys know, man, give it your best effort. If you can learn a lesson from what you did and there's things to improve on, learn the lesson, take it, but don't take personal offense to the reaction of some 21-year-old girl who may be drunk and maybe not even looked at you when you tried to approach her. Don't take it personally. They really don't know anything about you. So that's probably the biggest things that I've learned from cold approach, and have been able to develop thick skin from through all that as well too.
You mentioned that at one point you were 350 pounds, and
Yeah.
I think that, you know, you probably come across a lot of students who have sticking points. Either they're, you know, too heavy, they're too short, they think they're too ugly, they're you know, all sorts of different things. Maybe you can, you know, tell us a little bit about you know, what you did, I guess, to lose the weight, and how the effect was in terms of women, you know, how that affected your life with women, and you know, what you do with guys with their sticking points. How do you help them with them?
Absolutely. Great. Another great question. And like you said, it is something that a lot of guys struggle with. And it's very easy for a guy to see me now and be like, you know, especially when I'm out standing up straight with my good energy, giving a good delivery, be like, oh, he's a natural. He's always been like that. It's so easy for them to say it. But if they saw me when I was fat, I mean, there's pictures on my website. You could Google me. You'll see the pictures. You know, when I was fat, I had the long hair. I mean, I still wear glasses, but I wear contacts, so I took them off for the interview. But when I had my glasses, long hair, big beard, dressed in all black, super insecure, Cliff, I couldn't sit down with you and have this interview and share any information. I wasn't able to do that. I was so awkward and nervous and shy and so in my head and insecure and worried what people think. And all these things were holding me back. And, you know, it was a journey for me to not only lose the weight, but to develop the confidence and put myself out there, deal with the rejections to kind of get better with it. I've tried to circumvent and save guys a lot of the pain and stuff. But, you know, the cool thing about me, and which I think is awesome about me teaching guys, is I started from a really shitty place, you know, really deep depression, a lot of, you know, serious anxiety, panic attacks, no social skills, super overweight, terrible fashion, not knowing how to approach a girl, swearing I would never go to a bar in my life back then, because I never drank. You know, I had a lot of shit to overcome. So I can barely, if ever, remember a student that was worse than me when I first started. So I really had a lot of shit to overcome. Now, guys have their own things. There's no doubt that they have to overcome. You know, there's guys who are really short. There's guys who are overweight. You know, there's guys with accents. There's this and that. The cool thing about me coaching for so long is I've coached guys from everywhere. I've coached, you know, guys who are 5'2". I've coached guys right off the boat with the thickest accents in the world. I've coached guys in their 60s. I've coached guys who are overweight. I've coached guys who are skinny. I remember one boot camp, we had guys with deformities. One guy couldn't even turn his head. He couldn't even, you know, another guy had like a shoulder up here. Like I swear to God, my one buddy had a student in a wheelchair. before. Okay. We used to have an instructor who had one arm. I mean, we've all these guys with all these things have been able to make it happen. And one thing I tell guys is that for every excuse that you have, there's somebody else who's making it happen, right? So you got to find inspiration from other people. That's number one. And number two, you have to work on these things, okay? I'm never going to tell a guy, oh, you're fat and you're fat. That's okay. You know, love yourself because you're fat and all this thing. No, dude, if you're fat, you have like 60, 70 or 80% chance of a higher chance of getting diseases. It's unhealthy, right? I was unhealthy. I'm telling you this out of love. I was the same way. Out of love, it's a very good idea for you to eat clean, whole foods. It's a good idea for you to get some exercise, to go out in the sunlight, to go for a walk. It's very healthy for you to do that. So I'm going to always advocate that, guys, work on those things. I think fitness and nutrition pays off so much. It's just such a gimme. I'm a former multi-certified personal trainer. I used to be a fitness trainer for years as a profession. And then I eventually got into, doing this stuff because I was more passionate about this. And this is more holistic. But you better believe, if I have a phone student right now who I've been coaching for the last couple of months. He's down 20 pounds now in 6 weeks or something like that. So you better believe one of the first things we started was to cut the sugar out of his diet and get him into the gym. When you look good, you feel good when you're healthy. So if it's something that you could fix, I'm not going to say, don't worry about that. We can do it with that. Yeah, you can do it with that. Dude, when I was 340 pounds and I started reading these books and I started to change my personality, I could go out and get numbers. I was actually getting results when I was heavier. But I hit a point where I used to say, okay, if my game is good, then it doesn't matter what I look like. I hit a point where I was like, let me just fire on all cylinders, man. I'm not happy with the way I look. I don't like that I'm heavy. Let me get into shape. Let me dress better. Let me work on all these aspects of my life. And I feel much better and much more proud when I go to the gym and I can work out and I see maybe a new vein popping out on my arms like that. That keeps me excited. It keeps me motivated to go to the gym for the next 2 months or something like that, right? So if it's positive and it's going to help you, then I'm a big advocate for it. I definitely think guys should wear clothes that they feel good in, something that looks cool. I have a huge fashion board where I have all these pictures of cool clothes that I send my students. And I'm like, pick something out that resonates with you and let's go and try to buy it and replicate it. I definitely think that you should maximize what you have. And fashion and fitness is such a gimme. You should go for that. And as far as guys with other things like being other races and accents and this and that, man, some of the best guys I know are Indian guys, are really thick Indian accents. My one buddy was awesome, was straight from Africa, had a crazy African accent, and it was just super, super awesome. At the end of the day, if you get in your head and make these things a big deal, they'll be a big deal. And you know what it really is? Your brain is a protection mechanism. Your brain wants you to be safe. My brain wants me to be sitting on this couch, eating food, maybe with a chick around or whatever, not doing anything, right? But if I do that, I'm not going to make any progress. I'm not going to live a fulfilling life. I'm not going to make any impact. I'm not going to live a great life, right? So you have to go against what your natural, what your brain actually tells you. And your brain will say, oh, you're fat or you're this or that. We all have our insecurities, okay? I have, from losing the weight, I have a lot of extra skin around my waist and I don't think it looks very attractive, right? And it's very hard for me to lose weight in certain areas because I was so big before. And yeah, sometimes I'm insecure about it, but at the end of the day, I'm like, that's one little thing. Who cares? I have a lot of great things about myself as well too. I'm never going to be perfect. No one's ever going to be perfect. And if you could accept your insecurities, if you can accept your insecurities, you can embrace and present your strengths as well too. And that's really what it is. And if you don't have any strengths, then shit, let's develop them, man. My strengths were all developed over the last 10 years. And there's a lot of guys, and every guy that I wind up coaching has something really cool about them. And I really spend a lot of time digging that up. What is it about you? What are you interested in? Like I said, what have you accomplished? What have you done? And we try to bring up those things and showcase them and get their minds off of these other little things that hold them back, because nobody's perfect, man. I mean, I feel bad for women. Imagine how women feel. Like they're judged so much off their looks. If one thing is off, they're more insecure than anybody. And I feel bad for them for that reason. And at the end of the day, God or whoever you believe in gave you the body he gave you the genetics he gave you the cards that you have, and you got to play them to the best of your abilities and make the most out of them. So anything else is, like I said, just your brain making an excuse to keep you on the couch, keep you from taking action. So I say, don't listen to those excuses and kind of and take the action anyway and maximize what you have. Cliff, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's my my spiel for that.
Okay. You mentioned also that you had a number of mentors. Maybe you could tell us a few of the guys that really influenced you the most, and maybe pick out something in particular that stands out in your mind from what you learned from them.
Yeah, a lot of my mentors don't teach anymore, which is kind of sad, but that's kind of how it was. When I first started, I started reading offline. Like I said, I mentioned those guys, David D. and Double Your Dating, and I read some old Ross Jeffrey stuff and Mystery and all that. I don't tell guys to read that old school stuff anymore because it was written a really long time ago, and I think there's a lot of better stuff out there. Eventually, when I got into love systems, Future was a big guy. There's a guy named Braddock who I learned from, was an instructor for me. And there's other guys, other instructors that no one's ever heard about that don't have their face out there, that don't even teach anymore. But man, they were better than anybody I ever met. And they were just so awesome. They really pushed the limits and really inspired me. I mean, there's guys, I get inspired by my students. There's other guys who, like I said, like they're not even online. They're doing different things now, but they had shortcomings, right? Like one friend of mine was only 5'9", really skinny, thick Indian accent. But man, he had so much courage and had great game and really went after it and got such great results that, I learned from him, and whatever he did great, I kind of adapted that to myself. Captain Jackson, the guy who wasn't around, I used to read all through his old stuff. And then eventually I just started learning from my own successes, and I learned from my students. I mean, even as I'm teaching nowadays, my boot camp notes are in a PowerPoint. And if students bring something up and we come up with a good point, I add it to my notes, man. I don't have ego anymore. One thing that my instructor told me, and then he said he really respected about me, that's something that he did as well, is he said, be a seeker of truth. If something works better, then do it. Like I said, I was really into the routines and all this other stuff. Then when I found out that I can improvise the conversations and that worked better, I threw the routines in the garbage the next day. There was no ego. There was no attachment. There's nothing. If somebody else comes and finds something that works better than the stuff that I do, if it's a student, if it's whoever, thank you. I will throw that stuff in the garbage and I will adapt the thing that works better. I'm always changing and always open to putting the best thing forward that I can. There's a billionaire investor named Ray Dalio. He's a great guy. He wrote the book called Principles. And he says, like, even when he has important decisions to make, he brings a whole group of people with radically different opinions together, and everybody shares their opinion. And whatever one makes the most sense to solve the problem, he takes that. It's not his own idea. It doesn't matter whose idea it is. There's no ego. Let's take the best one that works and go forward. So I'm all about that. Eventually, nowadays, the things that I study and I'm really into, I'm super into happiness, spirituality, and once you get the tactics down, once you know how push-pull works, once you can carry a conversation, you know how to approach women. After that, it's all about addressing those things that you mentioned, right? Those shortcomings that guys think they have. So working on your inner game and how you feel about yourself and how clean your thinking is and your happiness, that's everything. So that's a lot of stuff that I study now. A guy who I learned a tremendous amount from that really changed me a lot was Wayne Dyer. Wayne Dyer talks a lot about self-acceptance and being true to yourself and operating according to that, and not being so influenced on what other people think. I mean, that's a guy who, his studies have brought me so much peace and happiness. That's actually helped me go out and meet women and connect with them a lot more. So I get inspiration from so many places, man. And as far as guys with actual dating skills that I got the advice from, unfortunately, they're not really around anymore, and they don't really teach it. But I got to spend a lot of time with these guys in person, and I let their teachings live on. I still teach a lot of stuff that they taught me. I've adapted it, and I try to share all the stuff that I've learned. That's the cool thing about what I get to do is I want to stick around for a while. I got some few more years left doing this for sure. I really want to give away all the stuff that I've learned.
How do you help? Maybe give us some ideas of how you help guys with their inner game.
Yeah. So one of the things that I do, like I mentioned before, is definitely starting with the self-esteem. I'll have guys write down things that they're proud of and they're accomplished, and develop a list of things that make them that they're really unique and proud of. That's a great exercise to do. Another exercise to do is I have guys write out their actual limiting beliefs. I learned this from a David D audio years ago. David Burns talks about it in Feeling Good. I've seen it in so many other things too. A great exercise that I've been doing since I started this is when I have a limiting or a negative belief pop up in my head, I pull up my phone and I write it down, right? Or I have a journal, I'll write it in my journal, right? So I'll write that down. So I go to approach the girl and I say, I see her, oh, she's really attractive. She's probably not into guys like me, and it keeps me from approaching her, right? So I would go home and I would write that down. I'd say, okay, she's really attractive. She wouldn't be into guys like me. And I'd say, well, what guy is she into? And I'm like, well, maybe she's into like, and then I think, I'm like, well, why not me, right? What are the good things about me? Maybe she could be into me. It's not like, celebrities are knocking on her door every day. There's no celebrities barely in the city anyway. So, with all the great things that I have going on, maybe I am way better than the average guy. So maybe I am a good fit. So I would actually go and write these beliefs down and challenge them. That's a great exercise that I do on my programs. I have guys do all the time, is write those things down that are holding you back. There's so many beliefs and blocks that we have in our head that we never write down and look at and actually challenge to see if they're actually real and see if there's some evidence that support the contrary, right? So that is one of the key exercises that I have guys do. Another one, like I said, is the self-esteem list. That's another one I came up, which is really cool. And, I'll send them to guys like Wayne Dyer and other people like that. Depends on what their issues are, what's kind of holding them back, right? If they're held back by, like you said, specific things about their look or this and that, then I'll give them references and show them examples and tell them about other people who've made it happen with that other stuff, right? Or we'll work on those specific insecurities that they have. A great way to get rid of an insecurity is to work on it, right? If I was insecure about my weight, then the great way to do it is to work about it. If you're insecure about the way you look or something like that, and you don't feel confident, maybe getting you a nice, cool outfit is a good way to do it. Even weight training and lifting weights, building a little muscle, is a great way to build confidence. Another thing a student told me the other day was when he started kickboxing and taking jujitsu, he got so much more confident because now he knew that he can defend himself in case he ever got into a scrap, which never happens really. I mean, I barely ever almost get into a fight. But the fact that he knew that he knew some martial arts, his confidence raised through the roof, right? One student gave me a great quote. He said, confidence comes through learning skills or something like that. So if you can add more skills and hobbies and things that you're good at to your repertoire, then you can add more confidence in yourself, right? If I'm playing guitar and I could play the Crazy Train solo from Ozzy Osbourne when I first learned that built my confidence. Right now, maybe it doesn't necessarily carry straight over to girls, but it builds my confidence in myself. I believe confidence is in two areas, and this is what I teach. The first area is confidence in yourself. And the second area is confidence in your game plan, right? If you're going up to women and you don't know what to say, then you need a game plan and something to do. So you'll have some confidence in that. And then the other part is confidence in yourself, where you say, okay, look, I've learned some other things. I'm good at some other things. I know that even if it goes bad, I have faith in myself that I'll figure it out at some point. And even the worst, I can handle it, right? So I like to develop a lot of those core foundational things for guys to kind of give them, more faith in themselves. And then obviously confidence in the skills. I hand them the skills and tell them what to say and do and give them kind of structure, which obviously jumps their confidence up a lot too.
Let's shift over to relationships, and maybe you can give us your philosophy about relationships and, how you look at them, how you approach them, how you get into them. Do you get into them? Do you get into more than one at the same time? What's your approach to this?
Yeah, I definitely don't classify myself as a relationship expert, right? I think guys, it's kind of hard to classify yourself as a complete relationship expert, in my opinion, because if you're in a great relationship, how many shots do you get to do that, right? If you're in a monogamous relationship and it lasts for 5 years and then you break up, then you get into another one, that's 2 relationships in 10 years, right? So can you say you're an expert on getting into relationships? You've only done it twice, right? So that's something where it's a little bit of a gray area, but somebody who's been in the relationship, maybe relationship management could be an expertise of theirs. I've only been in 2 serious long-term relationships. The first one was before I got into any of this. And there was one that was for a couple of years when I was kind of in the middle of this. And So like I said, I don't classify myself as an expert on how to do that. I definitely have rules and ways to help guys get into that. That's what they're looking for. And one of those things I have for guys is to really be stringent when you first start out with what you're looking for. Okay. I'll have, like I mentioned earlier, guys write down exactly what they're looking for and the qualities that they want and things they like and things they don't like, because you really have to screen for those things. And if somebody doesn't fit into those categories and they're not going to be a good fit for you, then, you're going to have to be a little more, I don't want to use the word ruthless, but you're going to have to be more, picky with the stuff that you kind of go into. Then you can become an old, jaded person like me who's met so many people and like seen so many things that I do want and things that I don't want, and like where I'm way too picky, obviously, and that's why I'm not in a relationship, and I don't want to be in one right now. Like I said, I like, if I'm teaching this, I want to be single and I want to teach guys what's kind of going on. I'll get in a relationship sometime. I'm open to it in the next several years or so. So I'm sure if that happens and somebody knocks me off my feet, I'm open to the opportunity. Personally, it's not a goal of mine right now. But if a guy comes to me and he wants to find something like that, then we're going to talk a lot about screening and qualification, because that's going to be really, really important. Also, setting up the frame and the boundaries and defining what the relationship is up front and having a lot of honesty is very, very, very important and very key for when you first get started. Because if somebody's doing something you don't like, they started early, they're going to do it for a while, then they're going to get used to that, right? You're going to set a bad precedent. So that's really key. And, one thing Tony Robbins said, which is really cool, he interviewed, he always asks this question actually at all the seminars. He gets somebody who's single. He says, okay, if somebody who's single, stand up. And they say, what are you looking for in a person? And they start listing things off. And I believe it's like 3 or 5. When they get over 5 thing, he cuts them off. He goes, all right, stop right there. He goes, that's why you're single. And his point is that if you want too much and you're too picky, then you're probably not going to find a relationship, right? So I have guys really whittle things down to what I call the non-negotiables. What are the non-negotiables for you? Just off the top of my head, if I think for me, if it was a girl that I would date seriously, the first non-negotiable would have to be she has to be fit and healthy, okay? I eat really healthy. I love to exercise. I could never date somebody who would be sitting on my couch right now with a bag of potato chips right in my face, or who wanted to go out and get pizza every day. Like that's not me. I couldn't have that around. We'd have to have a similar lifestyle in that respect. That would be a non-negotiable. Somebody who's positive. I couldn't have somebody who wanted to complain and be negative. So positivity would probably be a non-negotiable. From there, and have to have somewhat of an intelligence, that wants to read books and grow as a human being. I'd say those 3 are probably the foundational ones for me. There's a lot of other ones, obviously sense of humor and, growth mindset. And I don't know. I mean, I could list a whole bunch if I thought of them, but I have guys really break it down to the non-negotiables of what they're really looking for and defining that clearly. Because if you're going for a relationship, this is a whole different type of thing. If it's not just a casual dating type of thing, or if it's not just friends and having a good time, then you really want to be stringent and you want to be clear on what you really want. And the more clear you are on your intentions, the better opportunity you'll have of finding somebody. And that's where those things come in, where if I'm trying to find a girl and I just said, I gave you 3 of my things I'm looking for. Let's take one of them, fit and healthy, right? If I want to find a girl who's fit and healthy, then sure, I meet girls who work out and are healthy that go to the bars on the weekends. That's fine. But if I really want to find a girl who's fit and healthy, maybe it's better for me to go to a fitness expo, right? When I go to a fitness expo, every girl there works out and is super healthy, right? And I have like a field day at somewhere like that. So that's when, if you could find a venue that matches, like my buddy says, the venue should match the values, right? If you find a venue that matches one of those values and has a built-in commonality that you're looking for, like there's hiking meetups, tons of these here where I live. So if I want to go into nature and is active, then me going and meeting a girl at a hiking meetup may be a good idea if that's what I'm looking for as far as the relationship. So knowing what you want, defining the things that you want to screen for, and if you can try to go somewhere where there's going to be a built-in commonality, you'll have a much better chance of meeting somebody to join one of those relationships.
Well, I think you've shared a lot of interesting ideas tonight, and maybe you can tell guys what they could do to follow up to learn more from you. What did you have to offer them, basically, other than after listening to this interview and they wanted to learn more?
Sure. Yeah. Well, first off, thanks for having me so much, Cliff. This has been really cool. One thing I love doing about this is, you asked awesome questions to me, so I really thank you for that. You get me to kind of dig deep in my head and think on the spot and come up with really cool stuff. So, I can't wait to share this with my audience as well too, so they can check this out and get some information. Hopefully, I shared some good stuff that you guys have enjoyed here. So thank you for that. First off, if you want to get more information from me, the best place is probably YouTube. I put out a YouTube video every week. You can just type in Joe Ducard, Ducard. Subscribe and you'll get the videos to show up. If you want to check out my website, I have my story, my old fat pictures, and I have a free flirting guide, which is super awesome, which teaches you what to say after you actually approach and how to bring flirting into your conversation. Super cool guide that I made. It's completely free. You just put your email in at joeducard.com. I'll send that to you. And not only that, once you're on my email list, I send you great information every week. And I update you with videos. I have a free Facebook group, all that stuff. So either go to YouTube and type me in, or just go to joeducard.com and put in your email. You get the free flirting guide, and you'll get updated on. I try to give value every week, man. My whole thing is value, value, value. I definitely teach boot camps and have a course, but that's something that, if you're interested, I tell you, if you're interested in, you can click and check that out. But if not, I just want to give you guys value and just give you as much stuff that you can, chomp on it for free, whatever you want. And then if you ever wanted to meet me in person one day and train, then that option's there for you. There's no pressure.
Well, I think you've said some real interesting things tonight. I appreciate your taking the time with me, and I'm sure the guys are going to get a lot out of this one. And I enjoyed it, and I think actually we should do it again sometime soon.
Oh, I am. I had a blast talking to you, like I said, and I love sharing information. So I'd love to do it again. And once again, thank you so much for having me, and everybody watching. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed it and got some value from it.
I thought it was really great. So I'll end it here, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Cliff. I appreciate it, buddy. Thanks, guys.